what's happening is if take just 15 years ago, say 2000, going to places like, say, Mozambique. That's one of our top 20 countries that we get requests on. But yet, going there were the global giants who have large, complex security departments that take a look at the risk of doing business in Mozambique and what that presents on a much broader scale. And when I talk about risk, I do want to clarify that. I'm not talking about just the terror risk, because as people, the odds of a terrorist incident impacting a traveler are pretty low. It's along the same lines as an airplane crash. Anything from geopolitical situations, which could be protests. I mean, there's protests going on all over the world today, which are disrupting the ability to conduct business. And it presents a threat. That threat could be missing a meeting. The threat could be missing a flight, stranded for a week. The threat could be natural disaster, weather, impact randomly all over the world, because you can't predict natural disasters. Events you can predict with reasonable warnings, such as typhoons and hurricanes. It may be caused by protest. There's one in Rome right now. So we've got things like that going on to create. So you mitigate against that. Well, these companies are going to places like Mozambique now. And I'm talking just the global giants. We see companies with 50 people going there. Well, then they come back to their travel management company and say, help me with this. I gotta go to Mozambique. I need to know the entry-exit. What do people that are going there have to know around health? Because what happens if they get sick there? What happens? I need to know something in advance, so they're prepared in advance. Like if you're going to a malaria zone, taking your malaria medications. Things like that are the constant question. And of course, most companies are not equipped to deal with that. What's also happened is the urban. So because the world is urban, more people are living in large cities. So more than 10% of the world's population lives in cities. It's the first time that's happened in history. So because of that, it's important that everyone realize when something happens now, other group of people are affected by this. I hope we're on slide 5 that shows the threats that draw industry attention. Those are there because impacting concentrated areas where travelers are going in and out. When you a city as simple as Shanghai, wonderful city, I don't mind going there. The air pollution's a little tough to deal with. But I mean, they don't even know their population. Some of the estimates are as high as 27 million people live there. Well, that's the size of a huge percentage of the world's countries, even 27 million people. So that concentration, so if anything goes wrong in Shanghai, a strike, a major accident that causes a train derailment, whatever it might be, this now is back upon you. How to warn my people? How do I even know where they are? How to warn them? And then take care of it. So that's what my presentation today is going to go into. So we can move on now to what is travel risk management, because that's exactly what we're talking about here. And the slide that shows travel risk management program, just 7. Travel risk management, I'm going to read it. So I apologize for reading. I don't do that very often, but I will read some things that are very precise, and then I like talking to the points because I think that resonates better for everyone to understand my viewpoint. Travel risk management is a well-defined process to identify risks for travelers pre-trip, threats, and respond to incidents as they arise. And 3 things I do want to focus a little bit of time on. These simple words that fit into a perfect little circle called prepare, monitor, respond. Before you go. Okay, that's intuitive. Most people think about that, but I cite a lot of GBTA statistics from surveys that they've ran because they're obviously a business travel association. They're anything that we've produced to benefit our company. So I want to make sure I make that clear. I'm not here to sell anything to you from a product standpoint. What I'm here to do is provide you expertise. So one of the statistics was 83% of international business travelers travel without any information. And the reason they do it is they're people like me who are road warriors who it's their first, second, or 20th international trip. So they pick up and they go. Their biggest concern is, when do I get currency and do I have the appropriate chargers to charge my devices? That's your biggest worry for most international travelers who are road warriors. That is, they may have ever had anything go wrong. So are they prepared? If a situation happens, who do they call? Are they prepared, monitoring everything going on around me because they can't do it? They're not, I mean, a lot of business travelers, it's not rare for me to go on a 2-week trip and not turn on the TV once. We're busy. We don't dealing with that. If we haven't seen it at the hotel gym, you're not going to see it. So we're not paying attention to the news, and the news did not provide you with anything that's meaningful and actionable. So that's to the second phase. They haven't prepared, okay? So that's a failure in the system. Then they get to the place, and who's monitoring what's going on around that area and monitoring their movements. Charlie Hebdo shooting in Paris, horrific incident happened. A lot of companies had people in Paris. They don't. Paris is highly dangerous because it's not. Yes, it's some incidents, but so is New York and Boston. But they get it happens. Who's there so they can alert them? This is going on right now. Because again, if you pull up the news, that's something happening in Paris. They need someone telling them, here's exactly where it happened. So they, on their mobile device, they're seeing a map saying, holy cow. In a purpose, someone's actually monitoring their geolocation so they could say, here's the map and here's where you're standing. Because if they're in Paris, like most business travelers, you know Paris, we don't know the street names, you don't know the suburbs, you don't necessarily know your relationship directly to where the incident's going on. So how to keep them out of harm's way, because Charlie Hebdo was very serious. That was not something that was isolated just to that building. It ended up being a significant stand situation of almost like a movie type of the law enforcement trying to get that situation under control with the active shooters who were highly trained military individuals. So you've got to know where people are, but you will have to be able to give them something that's meaningful and actionable. Meaningful means this matters to me because I'm in Paris. Now that could be as simple as an Uber strike or because of Uber. That also happened here a few months ago. Well, if that means your top salespeople in Paris can no longer get to a meeting to close $1 million deal, you created a business interruption of significant nature because that could be a significant loss of revenue. 1. 2, travelers feel they're not properly protected by the company, duty of care, which I can get into that if we need to. 3, it's just the right thing to do to help assets of the company, because if they come back upset, you're going to potentially lose talent. And we've seen that many times where business travelers feel, my company's not taking good care of me, I'll be the next company, because his job market unemployment is very low, and if you're talking about the alpha salespeople, there is no unemployment for them. They can move to any company they want to, so even the slightest disruption, they up and leave. Well, that's really, really bad for your company, because now you're losing the rainmakers, which are, the human resources and the sales departments will tell you that could be $500,000 to replace that person because of lost production and then the time it takes to recruit a lot of things. So you've got to look at those assets. So monitoring piece. And then the response piece is the one that gets the least attention. When it happens, it's the sexiest thing they want to put on the news, meaning you do pre-trip and how much you do during the trip. Stop, okay? Now, they used to never have to do an evacuation, and we'll tell you that as a company. We'd love it if all of our people left before they had to be evac'd. But the bottom is, happen, natural disasters can happen, wildcat strikes can happen that actually be violent, because a lot of countries' strikes end up becoming riot situations. Ask yourself, who's going to get them? Because now you are at the highest risk you will have in your company of failure. And public relations risk, that's reputational risk, that's risk to your employees, it's risk to business interruption, because you've got to have people moved potentially in an extremely high threat situation, under escorts. There could be people being killed near them, and this is not, I'm not trying to glamorize it. We've seen it in Egypt, we've seen it in Tunisia, we've seen it in Burundi, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen. These situations happen. Businesses have to get extracted. So who's doing that response, and how quickly can they do it? Because speed is everything here. And now we get into the flow chart shows how a program works from planning, training, 24/7 monitoring. That's the prepare, monitor. That's the proactive stuff, and then the incident response is the reactive. Something has to happen. But that one, how fast it happens, dramatically changes the risk profile in two ways. Mostly it lowers the threats to the individuals being harmed. If we leave the country early enough, often it's no more useful than a professional driver picking someone up and taking him to an airport to get him on a scheduled aircraft. Not threatening, not real stressful, no one shooting at him, no checkpoints. You just taking him to the airport. Risk, minimum cost. All to where we got to do heavy teams extracting individuals beyond where they're under fire to a rotary extraction to a checkpoint. Dangerous, highly threatening, extraordinarily expensive. So you lose two components to it, and you're in. So now I want to shift. Now that we talked about travel risk management, perfect. Everyone understands where we're coming from there. Not enough companies think about this from what it means to a risk to their enterprise. And I'll give you one quick financial example. If you have sophisticated operations, all over the world, monitor those assets and everything going around them. When I mean assets, I mean actual facilities here, not the human assets. You always want to monitor them. If you plan, you practice plan and you execute on that plan, getting that plan can cost you some money. It cost you probably low six figures to put that together and train it every year. Now you on the phone might say, holy cow, that's a lot of money. A direct example of a situation happening in Turkey where a company did not have a plan. They didn't want to spend the money preparing, even though they're in Turkey. They've got operations all over the world, actually. This particular location then became under high threat. To fix the situation for them was over $1.7 million. So they sat there and said, holy cow. We did spend the preventative part. It's like having auto insurance. I don't want it when I don't need it, but then when I need it, what's it going to cost me? Well, you have insurance, and this is the same situation. You have it, in that case, was to pay for the $1.7 million, to ensure it never happened. So that's the case here. So let's move on now to the megatrends, which I love talking about this. We go to the slide that says Megatrends 2030. Okay, megatrends, and this is something those of us in the intelligence community get excited about. Once every 4 years, the Office of Intelligence comes together through all the government intelligence agencies and all of their peripheral supporters, such as what we do, and they come up with a forward-looking trends report on what is happening in the world and what potentially means from a geopolitical landscape standpoint. And this is incredibly important to look at when you're going out 15 to 20 years for the travel industry, because this is starting to look at is One, to keep in this direction, and a mega trend is obviously a mega trend. It's happening. It's very tough to make a complete shift off a mega trend. Mega trends just tend to grow. Now, of course, they'll course correct as certain things happen, such as wars or major technology innovation, or something that happens, such as natural disasters, drought. But for the most part, mega trends are going to keep going. Now, is sticking your head in the sand. Look going, that's where opportunity comes up. So a couple of the ones I'll talk about real quick on this are, you'll see up on the screen, technical innovation, globalization of business, demographic changes, rise of China, instability in the Arab world, and the growing food, water, and energy competition, so just scarcity. Now, this is a very long, detailed intelligence report. iJet is one of the few companies that actually is commissioned to speak on this, and it's an easy 4-hour lecture. Well, I'm not going to lecture you for 4 hours today. I don't think anybody wants to talk. Well, you might, but I know Mike would say she wouldn't want to hear me talk for 4 hours about this. I'll talk because they all dramatically affect on this call. First is the technological innovations. Presentation. Somebody said, do you realize the iPhone hasn't even been around for 10 years yet? Holy cow, I believe the iPhone launched in 2008. Seems like it's been in our lives forever. And iPhones, that also parlays into other extremely smart devices, not BlackBerries. They were around since the late 90s. But something that completely changes the way you do everything from a technology standpoint. It's not even 10 years yet, but it feels like a lifetime. When I was a kid, it took basically 10 years to go from a rotary phone to a PAL phone. So the gap was not closed very quickly. Now technology is leaping, and the one statement which is accurate is, today the slowest technology will advance in your lifetime. Every day until we pass away, technology will advance faster. And growing by leaps and bounds, the technology that I've seen on some of the prototypes out there now is staggering, especially around neural transmissions, where you're able to think, you'll be able to tell your car how to drive, you won't even have to speak it. And actually, I've seen that demo. That's not stories. I've seen Toyota has 2 cars that run off of brainwaves. Things are happening at extraordinary speed. So the technology innovations are going. Now, obviously, there's a cost. Could build supersonic commercial transport to mass the world? Absolutely. We go to hypersonic speeds. It's not cost effective. So there's a cost that comes down. So you say in the airline industry, gee, I mean, the industry, it sure would be nice to go, New Shanghai in an hour and 45 minutes. Absolutely. Is the technology there? Absolutely. But spending $1 billion on each aircraft is not realistic. So that happened quickly. Sometimes, maybe my kids they'll probably see that. Kids will also see things like nanomedicine cures cancer. A lot of articles I'm seeing now are saying by 2030 it's realistic cancer will be a disease, not a terminal disease. It'll be a treatable disease through nanomeds. So they're going to disrupt the world. So you have to ask yourself, okay, where are the companies going to be traveling to be developing technologies, because the opportunity is going to be for the travel industry. The globalization of business I talked about. Look up on our screen every day. We have 144 million trips annually. When we look every day, sitting in my office, I look at where people are going and what matters to them and what are they inquiring about. And shift, it's no longer just a standard, I'm worried about Mexico, I'm worried about Nigeria, I'm worried about Iraq. That big 3 for the longest. Now it's all over the world. It's Saudi Arabia, it's Mozambique, it's Ethiopia. It's unbelievable parts of the world where they're opening up commerce. So you have to understand the globalization of business and where the shift is happening. And it's more than just the BRIC countries. And you hear everyone talk about the BRIC, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China. It's the next 11. The GLOBAC's next 11, which includes countries like Bangladesh and Kenya and South Africa. The next 11, by 2025, will have a larger GDP than Europe. Now, that's not hard to believe when you look at the struggles of most of Europe outside of, UK is on head right now, where by 2017 they may no longer be part of the European Union, but France is about it. So those globalization is going to change, where you're going to see business travel to areas you never thought of before, small places like that. Demographics are important because that affects the political environment of how your companies are able to do business. The word urban, I mentioned that earlier. Urban population vote more left-leaning. Left votes mean different style of government. I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I'm merely saying the fact. Urbanizations vote left because they're more favorable of work business rights. Not saying business will be bad, but that has to be noted and taken into account. The of China, and you could say the rise and fall as in collapse. In China's and we've seen it completely disrupt the global market. China's going to grow fast again. It's not going to. You have to get the fact it's going into a growth mode of a mature country like the United States, the United Kingdom. They are 1.2 billion people. They should have the largest economy in the world. I'm not going to sit here and beat a drum saying the United States has to have the biggest economy. The reality of it is China's not going to continue growing fast, but that's going to dramatically change where people are going. Business will move away from China production, so what's the next region going to be producing? Was that Africa? All the points show that. Will it be South America? Very possible. It's looking at where the dynamic shift in production is going to go, and that's where the business opportunity is going to grow. The Arab world, this is where it gets into the scary part. We recently see instability in the Arab world. There's nothing. It's not going to change. What's going to happen is it's going to continue to grow. And that's not going to go away. So what we have, you still have business going in and out of the Arab world. How to mitigate that risk at a maximum level. And that's a threat because can instability carry over? Absolutely. And you're seeing some of that with what's going on in Syria. So understanding that goes into the last one, because it's unbelievable. Often religion is pointed as the root cause of all instability. And I'm not going to sit here and argue whether, because religion is, and it doesn't matter whether it's Muslim, Christian, and Judaism. Religion is often the rally point around the conflict. But if you look at the conflict and instability in the world, and you overlay the map of scarcity of water, which the scarcity of food, they almost match identically. So if you have no natural resources, you're going poor. If you're poor, you're highly susceptible to influence radical organizations. Money. They might help, but as you know, in most of that Middle East, the oil is controlled by wealthy families or monarchies. It's shared with the people, so that creates an anger. It makes it a very easy ground. People ask me all the time, how does ISIS recruit so easy? It's the we in the United States relate to gang recruiting, especially back in the 80s. If you've got no hope, poorly educated, with no hope of getting out, it was easy to turn to crime. You don't through brute force. History has shown that doesn't fix anything. Incarceration not fix anything. You fix it by showing people there's opportunity to make a decent life. Because an 18-year-old who can make a decent living would rather do that than crime. There's been plenty of studies show that. In these countries, if individuals are poor, they have absolutely no hope, they feel they're being oppressed by the West or whatever, they can use religion as a rallying cry, it's easy to recruit to ISIS. So that's why they're able to get the individuals into that. But the food component is staggering. The Chinese are, of course, fiercely protecting the Tibetan headwaters from the Himalayas, because without water, you're done in 7 days. Food you can stretch out, you can resources work over much longer periods of time. When you're out of water, like Yemen is, you think Yemen's bad now? Yemen has water. It was produced by Saudi Arabia desalinization. Saudi Arabia can only do that for so long that they have the money to do that using oil, because it's incredibly resource to produce desalinized water. So that creates a disruption there. China is going to fiercely and militarily protect their water and obviously their food and their energy. They're building up such massive storage of oil right now. The oil reserves in China can rival the United States oil reserves. Actually, so that's strategic reserves. That's why we have them. Okay, world collect, and I'm not talking like a world war, like nuclear cost. I'm talking about a complete disruption in a region. We can hold off ourselves and be very safe for a very long period of time. China's doing the same thing, but they're going to protect that. So what does that mean towards potential disruption, business, etc.? So I will not go more into that. It's just the areas within the mega trends are extremely interesting, especially when you drill down to what that means from political shift. I mean, one of those political shifts yesterday with the Prime Minister of Australia being outed. You can say, regardless, that's a major shift. Now, Australia's had a number of shifts in 3 years. Well, this falls into exactly what we're talking about through demographic changes. Those are going in other countries, which we've seen in several of the Middle East countries. So, changing, move to the next slide. The global, because everybody has to look at doing global. I don't care if you have 50 people, you've got to look at doing business globally. Say the number one concern of travelers, that's a GTA statistic, because when they have to go to that new country, they want safe. No, you can go to a hospital if they've got the flu. Medicine. They is not in their room, or someone's following them around, or they're at risk of crime, or worse, kidnapping. Cyber, big threat financially to companies. And the reason you see companies now spending 10 times on cybersecurity what they spend on physical security, because the average cyber crime against a company is almost $10 million. Fail, they cost the company $10 million unless they had some sort of lawsuits or lost a major contract. But the average hit. And one of the main cyber, and I won't get too much into cyber, but it's very interesting because 30% of all cyber crime is created by human stupidity, mostly by business travelers. Meaning they land, and the first thing they do is log into unsecure Wi-Fi, or they are in their room. Something along those lines. So cyber is a big issue, and business resiliency versus incident management. Well, that's what I was talking about. If you're prepared and you see the incident, then it gets a lot easier. Okay, talk about integrated risk management real quick. That's slide 12. I just said you integrate all the risk. People, which is the travel part, tie into facilities, because you've got offices all over the world, which tie into the supply chain, which you have to have supply going in and out. Information, which is the cyber part, which ties back to the travelers, because if travelers do dumb things, they expose their companies to time, which is then huge components of it. Security, I'll jump on now. The changing dynamics in corporate security. Corporate security managers are more involved in travel because they risk to the company, involved in cyber because of the financial component, and now the legal and all the other reputational issues. We've seen what things like Carbon, which is the one that took out Target and some others, that was over $1 billion they got. $1 billion. No banker ever got $1 billion. In fact, I saw a stat the other day from one of the major U.S. banks. They have not had a successful bank robbery since 2009. Not meaning people didn't get out of the bank with money, 1% were caught. 100%. Bank don't work anymore. Some works because they get millions and billions out of it. Supply that because they see that as a potential disruption and they don't know what their suppliers are doing. Travel is one of the biggest risks. That's chief information security officers are now making travel report to them because they want to know what travelers are doing, what they're taking on the road, and they want to restrict it. Responsible for mitigating risks on a global scale, duty care around travelers, expats, and facilities. When I'm Charlie Hebdo, well, what happens if you have a small office in Paris and you tell the travelers there, there's going on, here's your map, here's where not to go, but nobody's telling the employees there because they don't have the news on, they don't know what's going on, and even if they do, they don't know how that relates to their particular office. So, I like that kind of just wrap up with the prepare, monitor, respond that I said earlier because I love that, and it is a circle because sometimes you come in at any point in that circle, companies don't have a plan, it may start with response. So lead back to preparing and monitoring so they don't have that. Risk is the one everybody always wants to talk about, saying, okay, there's risk. We have to manage that risk and then mitigate that risk, but there's a cost to that. So what's our return on investment? Well, circle, I won't get into that. It talks about all the things on the outside that are going to affect you. The things on the inside then are what divisions within the company are going to have to get involved to manage. It's not just travel. Travel is in there, but it includes supply chain, business continuity, which is a requirement, security, HR and legal, risk management, and then of course one other piece that's in that is public relations, because when something does go wrong, the reputational risk could be massive. And then on the right is about it earlier. React, the low cost. It's simple. As the cost go up as the time goes out. So to conclude, what's changing? Management, duty is important, but it's broader than duty of care. And yes, there has been a duty of care lawsuit in the United States that was awarded $41.7 million for failure to protect a student going to China against tick bites. So it was a situation with the student where she ended up losing her voice permanently from incest. But the point was they warned her against threat so she could properly mitigate it, just like warn someone going to a malaria zone against mosquito bites. The world is dangerous because of conflict. There's 44 kinetic conflicts going on. And the urbanization of major cities makes it dangerous for your travelers. It's crazier. The world's safer. As a whole, it's because we're going everywhere that it's more dangerous. It's more than travelers. It's facilities, supply chain, people, which is travelers, expats, and their patient, and the expanding role of corporate security. So I believe my goal was to be done at 11:40, so I'm done at 11:41. I'm 1 minute over, actually 39 seconds over. So apologize for that, but I believe now we have to open it up for questions, because part of any session is to be able to ask questions and then be able to get answers that mean something to you.
Very much for the very informative presentation. We do have 15 minutes set aside now for some questions. If you have a question, please press add in or unmute your phones so that you can speak. We have a few questions that have come in chat. So everybody has a chance to unmute their phone. I'll go ahead and ask the first one that's come to in chat. And this person asks, how do we warn our travelers?
Well, warning the travelers, there's two phases to it. There's the preparation standpoint, so the moment a trip is booked, they get a briefing on where they're going. Okay, that's a type of warning saying, okay, you're going here, and here is the threat information. And I say threat a lot, and I use a lot of formal government terms. You guys saw my background, so I apologize if I'm an operations-driven individual in that aspect. But the things you need to know before you go. The most important part, though, is the alerting part. So someone is monitoring where these people are going, and second, they know their location, so it shows they're in Paris on this day, alert for Paris, or whatever polygon you want drawn around Paris. It's informing maybe the whole of France, maybe the whole of Europe. Now pushing an alert to the individual, that's the alerting, saying here's what you need to know, but the bigger part of the alerting is the ability for you to instantly pull up. So something has happened, which you alert on. You instantly look at a list of travelers or expats or assets do I have affected by this, and now communicate with them. Meaning, if it's people, you might choose to call each one separately, and you've got to have their correct mobile numbers. If it's a mass group, it's 1,000 people in the Philippines, you need to have a mass communication system so that you can push a button and say, here's an alert that goes out, it shows up, it's almost like an Amber Alert comes up on their phone. It's a notification says, you need to know this, and here's action to take, shelter in place, point, call in, check in, whatever protocols your company sets. So there are multiple ways. You communicate with them when they book the trip through, we call them emails, most companies call it, a trip brief. You while they're traveling, and then you're able to have mass communication to get out to them immediately.
Okay, a few more questions in chat, but before we get to those, does anybody have a question they'd like to verbalize? No, okay, these others that came in on very good chat. This one is, what if our company travels only domestically? How having a risk mitigation program affect us, and how do we get started?
Well, dangerous is international, and I hear this a lot from companies, and it drives me absolutely mad. When you look at incidents that have happened in the United States, okay, start with natural disasters. We have hurricanes. One of the worst hurricanes in history hit New Orleans and created an unbelievable disruption. We can have a plan. Then you've got Hurricane Sandy just a couple years ago, which is here. We literally had people calling us from old payphones standing in 3 feet of water because they didn't know what to do, and they knew payphones were still up when some of the cell phone towers were down. That's a real scenario. Then you've got things like the Boston bombing. You go all the way back to the horrific things of 9/11. But you have other situations, such as there's military base shootings, active shooters. So there's a domestic threat. The nice thing about domestic threat in the United States is our emergency management systems work very, very well. So you don't need someone that's going to be able to provide the response piece. That's provided from 911. What you need is the ability to prepare people before they go, because they know city information. If allowing something like letting people book their own hotels, do they know what part of the city it's in? Do they know if that part of the city is safe? Many countries are allowing Airbnb now. I'm not promoting Airbnb. I'm facing the reality of they don't do millions of reservations, out of the air. Well, I know what part of the city is. If I don't know Los Angeles, there's parts of Los Angeles I probably don't want to allow my business travelers to book a property. So that goes into the phase of having a domestic plan for preparation. And they don't need to monitor people domestically, because what happens if there's a bad incident? Say a rocket turns and blows up. Toxic. We need mass communication to notify every traveler and the assets around that area that could be affected immediately, because, again, the news is information. That doesn't get actionable for you. So domestically is just as important as national. It's just a little easier because you have to worry about the response piece. Emergency management in the U.S. is quite good at that.
Okay. Another question from the same asker. She wants to know, you made a 6-figure number to the National Risk Management Program. Do you have an idea of what the figure would be for a domestic-only program?
Well, what I gave was around facility plans for a facility. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that, because I wanted to make a comparison of how it was more than 10x when they had an incident because they didn't have a plan. A travel risk management program is not going to cost you low six figures. It's going to cost you based upon the size and scope of your business. And often that's on several things. How many travelers do you have a year? Where, even if it's just domestic, and what services do you need? Because you have to look at what your company internally. So it's hard to give you a benchmark, but a lot of companies that have small programs, meaning you have less than maybe 5,000 travelers domestically, you're able to do a travel risk management program well under $50,000. Got 250,000 travelers running all over the world, that's not going to be a $50,000 program. But it's tailored to your needs, but it's not going to break your bank if you get what I'm talking about there. It's not horribly expensive at all. The risk it mitigates, it's unbelievable.
Okay, great. And it came in chat says, just a little bit about cybersecurity. You said you weren't going to spend time on it during the presentation, but they're a great resource where we can learn more.
Well, management provider will have a cybersecurity component, which is very important for that. Now, if your company has a huge cyber potential risk, usually they have a cyber department already within your company. But part of it where a lot of things fall through the cracks are around the business travelers, and that's helping write a proper protocol. So you usually get the information officer, the information security officer, technology officer, whatever, closely with the trip and come up with a proper policy that says, here are things you should and shouldn't do traveling. I mentioned unsecured Wi-Fi. A laptop in your room. Taking a laptop that has company intellectual property on it that's not needed for that trip. You know, the recommendation that we make hard is, one, you should device with you if you can. Meaning a laptop that has nothing on it, the ability to go through a VPN, so you can access your company information from a VPN, but not stored on the device. But it has a USB drive that you can carry, an encrypted USB, so that you can get your information off of it, but it's encrypted, so if somebody steals it, it's not easily going to be broken. Sure, if it's a state stealing it, like if you're in China and the Chinese government, they're going to break it. You have to understand that. But if a low-level criminal gets a hold of it, they're not going to crack a 256 encryption USB drive. So what happens a lot of time is business travelers get busy. They're sitting in their email. They've got 50,000 items in their email, and they've got a whole lot of attachments with everything on there, from architectural designs to company pricing to whatever. And what companies fail to understand is more than 80% of the world's spying is corporate espionage. But yet the CIA and the 17 U.S. government intelligence agencies and DSE and M6 are doing all their spying, and the Russians. But 80% of real spying is corporate. And it's your biggest competitor sitting in the room next to you in a hotel listening through the wall with a cup. It's individuals who know how to get your information, taking it to the black market to sell it to your biggest competitor. That's where the companies make the failure. They underestimate the sophistication of these individuals, and it's staggering what these people can do. Like I said, when there's billions of dollars at play, you get the best, brightest people in the world can be turned to the dark side, and we actually call it the dark web, to work for organizations. Now, fortunately, the governments are able to recruit the same level of individuals to thwart them, but times are hardcore. So the cyber program starts with protocols, a lot of things that travelers have never thought of. What's sitting in your inbox? What's sitting in your company hard drive? Well, maybe was a company investing a few $100 extra in that business traveler to have an encrypted USB or split hard drive on their laptop, and one of them's an encrypted split hard drive that can't be seen externally, which will rip the machine apart to get to it. I've seen quads like that. Little like that, because think about the concentrated risk of intellectual property sitting on your alpha sales rep's laptop on any given day. And that freaks companies out. And at GBTA, we bring in someone from the NFL Players Association to talk about intellectual property concentration. Most people never think about their intellectual property concentration. And the way the NFL puts it that opens people's eyes is said every week, half of the NFL teams, 6 teams during a normal full week, 4% of their intellectual property on an aircraft. If it crashes, that in essence, and yesterday it was announced the most valuable franchise in the world is the Dallas Cowboys, I think at $3.2 billion. They're putting $3.2 billion at risk every week they fly. And if the plane goes down, it's over. There is no coming back from that, or not in a realistic time frame. I mean, that company's out of business for a significant period of time. When you think about it like that, now what is your company concentrating? It has a policy, let's not let more than 3 senior people fly on a flight, but we can't wait to put all of them in the same hotel with our top 100 salespeople and our top 100 clients for a corporate meeting. Now, I'm not saying corporate meetings are bad. They're actually very good. But has anybody sat down and detailed the profile of that property, concentrated risks we have there, and maybe split up the executives or put levels of security around the information, fire safety, because the hotel might meet minimum requirements, but it not meet your requirements because, say, it's not in the U.S., say it's in the Caribbean, very common destination, very safe, we love the Caribbean. But do you know you're putting all your intellectual property risk? So this, and a little bit ties back to cyber. Cyber will target conferences. It's in. Holy cow, there's going to be billions of dollars at this event that I could potentially hack into. Don't I go and try to steal? I have 2 multiple conferences in the last year where I was able to detect ghost signal Wi-Fis, which sit over the top of a legal Wi-Fi that look exactly like that one. You're logging in, just like you would log in to the hotel Wi-Fi. You don't know you're sitting on a ghost. It's like a skimming machine at a credit card or at a gas station. They're getting credit card information, but yet it works fine, and you're able to get your gas, and then your credit card's been stolen. The thing here, you're logging into the Wi-Fi, you think you're fine because you went in through a ghost Wi-Fi. That happens, and getting travelers on that, because I always say, I love travel. I love business travel. I want everybody traveling all over the world, but I want everyone a little bit paranoid, because that paranoid traveler can sit someday like me. I've been doing this for 29 years. I'm over 3 million flight miles. I've never had a crime against me traveling. I've only stuck overnight once in my career, and I do 150,000 miles a year now, mostly international. I'm paranoid traveling, but I watch everything going on. I've never had cybercrime. I've never had my credit card stolen. Here, I've had it stolen off the internet. My corporate card, my corporate years ago. I can say that because I'm a little paranoid, and I love hearing stories from paranoid business travelers that, my spidey sense, we like to call it spidey sense, just said something was wrong, and I didn't do that. Well, you never know if you did the right thing because you didn't thwart crime you saw. I'll guarantee you probably did thwart the crime. Whether it's crime, physical crime, way you carried yourself, you didn't make yourself a target, you avoided it so they got that next person. So sorry, long answer on cyber, but I get very passionate about cyber because I see how foolish individuals are with the company's information. And it's really bad because that's why the crime exists.
Thanks. Actually, kind of scary and very informative at the same time, but good information to have. That was all the questions we had come in through chat. Are there any additional questions that anyone would like to ask before we go? Well, John, thank you again for your presentation today, and we want to thank our audience for your participation. The webinar has been recorded and will be available for replay. If you think additional questions or you'd like more information on the subject, please contact your Travel On account manager. I'll be sure to mark your calendar for October 13th at 11, when we'll be building on this subject with our next webinar titled What You Need to Know About Traveler Tracking and Occasion Programs. Thank you, everyone, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.